So I had A-10s that night, and I think I had some F-15s. So just a whole assorted grab bag of warplanes. And so I spent the evening all night just calling in airstrikes on this town of Garmser, with the only caveat from Colonel Hope that I wasn't allowed to bomb the district center, because that was the whole reason we were there, was to liberate this place. So the following morning, when we decided, okay, we figured out that the bridge wasn't wired and things were fairly quiet and stable, we're going to push across the bridge and into the village, and we're going to clear it sort of street by street. So Recce platoon came up the back. We made up the rear sort of the column that was moving into this town, and we dismounted when we got sort of to the entrance of the village. Just on the other side of the bridge, there was a little gas station there, and we got out and started walking, and to my horror, sort of realized that there was still old people and women and children left in this village, because we had sort of under the impression that there hadn't been any, and so it wasn't a problem all night to be bombing and bombing and bombing. But I found out later on that they were in a basement inside the mosque, and so they were protected from any of the effects of the weapons that we were dropping. And
why did you think there were no civilians?
Because there was a couple indicators, and as we started getting close, you could see, you could always see the women and children flooding out of the village from miles away, because they're dressed very colorfully. And so they would just leave in masses, and you could see the whole line of them leaving, because they'd see us coming and they'd be like, okay, NATO's coming, there's going to be a fight. And we had no, like, even with all our observation and everything, we didn't see anybody that looked sort of innocent, or, you know, we didn't see any women, we didn't see any children, so we had just, I think, assumed that, okay, they're all gone, because they knew there was a fight coming. And so this old man was walking down the road, so we stopped him and started asking him questions, and, you know, what happened here and all this, and he was a little bit shell-shocked, and for good reason. And he said, oh, I'm going to work. I promised my boss I would be at work. I work at the gas station, and like I'm saying to him through the interpreter, there's no work today. The gas station's closed. You don't have to go. And he was adamant that he had to go. So I said, okay, well, I'll go with you. So we walked with him up towards the gas station, and there was some of the gas station left. A lot of it had already been destroyed, but so I said, he was confused, and he's like, I don't know where my boss is. And I said, well, why don't you make some tea, and we'll have a conversation. So he made some tea, and we sat down to have a conversation, and I asked him, you know, basically point blank, tell me what happened here. And so without going through all the details, the Reader's Digest version of what happened at Garmser was the Taliban came, because they were very close to the border, the Pakistani border. And they fought a little bit, but there's always police, Afghan National Police, stationed at the district centers. And so some of them left, and there was a couple that had stayed, and they killed the number of them that had stayed, all but one. And then they took a 12-year-old girl, so they had this 12-year-old girl and this Afghan national policeman, and they made everybody come to the town center. And every sort of Afghan village has a town center, and that's where the well is. And they had this is what the old man is telling us. They had the policeman on his knees, and they had a little girl on her knees, and they had a pile of weapons, and they said, okay, you know, we just took the district center, and we don't want NATO to take it back. So they cut the throats of the policeman and the little girl, and then they chopped parts of their bodies off or up. It was hard to tell what he was really getting at, because he was crying and stuff. And then dumped it into the well and said, anybody that doesn't take a weapon and fight NATO, we're going to do that to all your women and children. And so, you know, we came to the realization that, yeah, okay, we had been fighting against probably just some villagers that that were fighting under duress. They didn't want to, but they were sort of not given a choice. Regardless, they picked up a weapon and fired at us, so they were legitimate targets. But I remember thinking then that, you know, I was so angry with that, hearing that story, that I was like, wow, you know, these guys are butchers, they're brutal, and you know, they didn't have to kill that little girl, they didn't have to kill that policeman, but they just did it and said, you know, if you don't help us now, then this is what we're going to do to everybody. And I remember thinking that in my brain that I have a purpose for being here. If I can save one 12-year-old girl from getting her throat cut, then I've done my job, and I can go home with my head held high, going, I did a good thing in the world, and I don't feel ashamed about any of the other stuff that I've done while I've been here.